Hello, this is Jacob here for the Sons of Ours podcast, and I must admit that I was a little bit surprised. It was a little bit unexpected by the number of listeners that have reached out recently, asking if everything's okay, wondering why we haven't posted a podcast for a while. And thank you all for your concern. We're super glad to know that we have so many listeners that are excited for this podcast. So before this episode, I just wanted to apologize for the long delay between the podcasts and give you guys all a quick update. Our summer schedules are a bit sporadic from week to week, and things do come up. And Tony had to return home to be with his family for 2 weeks because his father had a heart attack. His father is doing much better now, and thank you for all your prayers if anybody had found out about that. Tony will share a little bit about that in a future podcast coming up in the next week or two. And while Tony was gone, I didn't prioritize editing the existing podcast that we had recorded. So when I got to the podcast that you'll hear today, I was about a week or so ago, I was ready to publish it, and I found out that the publishing company that we were using had changed its billing procedures, and so we were temporarily unable to access our services because we had to take care of the new billing structures. We had to make a couple calls. Tony and I called around to figure out how the seminary wanted us to handle the new billing. Once we got that figured out and got the billing set up with the company, we're live and ready to go again. And so just dropping this little update before this episode, and know that we do have a couple others on the way and hope to record a few more even before the end of the summer. We're ready to keep rolling. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the podcast today.
Hello and welcome to Sons of Ours podcast. I'm Tony Davis, one of your temporary hosts for the summer, and I'm here in the studio with
Jacob Machado. We're finally getting comfortable. I think we're only taking one takes on these intros now.
Exactly.
After the 7 the previous time we were trying.
At least 7. It also didn't help that last time we tried to do our intros, we had a soundboard that we were trying to insert funny sounds with. And
I was trying to do the sound effects, and that was just blowing up the system.
yeah, it was blowing up the system, and it was blowing up our minds. We couldn't stop laughing. Yeah, you got to be careful with those soundboards you find online. But yeah, we're very excited to be here today. Jacob and I both were well into our summer assignments that we've referenced numerous times in the past, so we won't bore you with that again. But it's a beautiful sunny day in Colorado. I was hoping to get out and go fishing today, Jacob, but we need to record a couple podcasts, and the rivers are all blown out, so I'm currently sidelined here in Colorado for fishing.
But you've been fishing a bit, haven't you?
I mean, the last few weeks, yeah. But I've been in the parish now for almost 4 weeks, and so.
But before you got to the parish, you were out fishing with actually our guest for today, correct?
I was, yeah. So every year in the past few years, I have taken any opportunity I can to take a little drive and go camping, just for the sole purpose of fishing. And last year, I invited our finance guy here at the seminary, Paul Villamaria, and he said, surprisingly, heck yeah, I'll meet you up there. So we went and fished on the Colorado River. Had a great time during the salmon fly hatch. Historic, we got salmon landing on our arms and everything like that. It was beautiful. And this year I decided to go out to Gunnison, Colorado, and I invited Paul. And surprisingly, once again, he said yes. And so we had an incredible time. It's always good fishing, and it's even better when you can fish with a friend, a mentor, and someone who just wants to be out on the river, understands your life, and is willing to be there for the sole purpose of fishing and growing closer to God. So we'd like to introduce Paul Villamaria. Welcome to the podcast. What's your official title here, Paul?
I am the Director of Finance, and thank you very much for having me today.
Yeah, no, it's an honor. Jacob and I have joked about doing a finance podcast for a little bit since Micah and Ian told us we were going to be doing this summer. And our big thing was like, let's just talk about numbers. We'll get the finance guy on. It'll be riveting. No one would fall asleep to a podcast about numbers, right?
Nobody.
Nobody. But what we did want to do today, we're trying to give people a glimpse into the life of the seminarians, and we thought, why not give them a glimpse into the life of the people who help run this place? Because you play a vital role not only in the finance side of our seminary, but in our formation. Right, we can always walk down the hallway, and we've got incredible people in our hallway. And one of the last people you pass when you're walking down the hallway towards the library from the seminary is Paul Villamaria's office. And without fail, I will always peek my head in there and say, "Wouldn't you rather be out on the river?" And he usually rolls his eyes a little bit and says, "It's good being here. It's good being here. I love fishing." So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from in the finance world, and then yeah, kind of how that ties into the seminary.
Thrilled to be here to talk about the seminary. I have worked for the seminary for a little over 4 years. Was hired by Father Trainer, the rector, our previous rector. And it was a little bit of an interesting story, too, because he had interviewed a ton of people and wasn't finding what he was looking for, particulars, what he was looking for. He ended up calling a person that I knew that was an accountant. She wasn't interested, but she says, I think there's somebody you should talk to. And I was just coming out of a gig of doing my own entrepreneurial thing for about 10 years. And
with?
Lamar's Donuts. I was a franchise owner with Lamar's Donuts.
My favorite donuts in Colorado.
Which location did you own?
I had 5 of them at one time here in Denver.
Were you the one up off like Havana and...
No, that one wasn't mine. I had one in Santa Fe and Littleton. I had one in 6th and Calumet.
That was a Sunday stop.
That's where I go all the time, 6th and Calumet.
Yeah. It was an adventure. Unfortunately, in line with my own personal luck, I was also an owner during the last Great Recession. So survived that and then decided it was time to maybe do something else. And I was lucky to have the chance to get a call, interview with Father Trainer, and 4 days later had a job.
Praise God.
And this is the first job in my career that I've worked where, the boss may send the paycheck, but I really feel like I'm working for something bigger. Mm-hmm. The mission of the seminary, the formation of our future Catholic priests, you guys. As I say every year at orientation, when we do an orientation every year, with all the really terrific stuff that we do around here with the pillars of formation that you guys go through. The
dimensions,
that's right. It's a new word in the ratio, isn't it? But with all those dimensions that we go through, like almost every place, there's still a business to be run. So in short, my job is to run the business of the seminary. My capacity, I'm responsible for all the accounting, all the finance, which would be the budgets, and then just the ongoing accounting, and all of facilities, and all of IT, and all of HR. I'm the liaison through the Archdiocese of Denver.
Yeah, basically what that means is literally every part of Jacob and my life, Paul is involved in to some degree, including our personal lives, now that Paul and I discovered our mutual love for fishing. But what would you say, we were talking before we started this podcast, maybe you could tell people, you get a question all the time, like, what's the seminary like? Because when people hear, you run the accounts for a seminary.
Right.
But what is a seminary? What does that even mean? Most
of the lay folks that I talk to give them the easiest understanding, is if you just think of a seminary like a college, you guys are young men, just like my sons who are going to be both in college next year. That sort of operational scheme is the easiest to understand, right? You're providing for the daily food, the daily housing, our classrooms, our professors, everything that. So a seminary, the easiest way to kind of wrap your head around a seminary is it's just like a college setting. And we're funded in the same way as most colleges are, right? We have endowments that we pull from each year. We have tuitions that we charge to sending dioceses, and we have fundraising that we have to go out and do. Every lay person who's got an alma mater knows that they get that letter once a year to send in a cash contribution for their college. Yeah. And
quick plug, what's your alma mater?
My alma mater is Colorado State University for my master's degree.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I was waiting to hear.
Tony Davis, the proud Colorado State dropout.
Yes, beauty school dropout.
Now, mine was 30 years ago. I graduated with my MBA in 1989. Holy cow.
Yeah, you're young still.
Yeah.
30 years young from master's degree.
Here at seminary, we have pretty good schedule of life. We wake up, we go to holy hour, we go to breakfast, we go to classes, we come back, we have mass, we go to lunch, we come back and go work out. We can, our life is pretty well structured and organized. And every morning I wake up and my lights come on, my faucet works, I have food at breakfast, I have food at lunch, and I don't really have to think about that. And it's because of the work of people like Paul. The classes are scheduled and everything's set up because of the teachers and the administrators we have here as well. And that runs because of donors who are supporting and the endowments we have. And sometimes it's easy for me to just in the day in, day out take it for granted. But one time last year, I was walking past your office, Paul, and I see you typing on the, what's it called?
A 10 key,
10
old
key,
school
yeah.
10 key.
So he's pumping in the numbers and it's like kicking out the receipt and it's like 200 feet long, just rolling on the floor.
Yeah.
And
he hates trees.
and I look in and my older brother and my younger sister are both accountants. And like, I would never have chosen that for myself. And I don't entirely understand what they do. And so I just peeked in my head and I was like, Paul, I come from a family of accountants and it's a foreign world to me. And I just want to say, thanks for what you do, because I couldn't do this.
No way.
But I mean, you're constantly doing so many of the little things that really do keep this place running and allow us to enter freely into formation. And when I said that to you, what really struck me, and I still carry, and I've told other people, was you just kind of respond with, I really love kind of what you already said. I really loved it. I'm working for a bigger mission here. It's not just a paycheck, and I'm supporting you guys in the service you will go and do later. And you don't always see that in action, but you see us in formation, and everybody walks by and knows Paul, and
Yeah.
And so thank you for that. But also, I think that's brings us to another point that you made of we're all part of the body of Christ, and we read from St. Paul that some are the eyes, some are the mouth, some are the hands, some are the feet. Everybody's got a different charism. And in our church, especially kind of in the modern world today, administration, I think, is a gift for people and is a charism that you actually are serving to make the body of Christ healthy in such a way. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on...
Well, and I'm actually reading a book right now. It's called The Gift of Administration. It was written by a Catholic priest. And he goes all the way back to the beginning of the church, right? So when Paul and Barnabas and Timothy are running around visiting the different communities and they're setting up the church, right? There were still lay people following him around that were doing a lot of all the administrative work. When he would when they were doing collections to send out to a certain community because maybe there had been a disaster in that area or something of that sort. A lot of those lay people were the ones who were going out doing the collections and then providing the funds. And I see myself as an extension of that even 2,000 years later, right?
Yeah.
This is my chance to work within the church. I'm a born and raised Catholic. I've been living in Colorado for 24 years now. In that time since then, I've done a lot of youth ministry, and the church has rewarded me in many ways. I met my wife, who was also a volunteer youth minister, working at a parish doing youth ministry. Then we did marriage ministry for a while. Monsignor Leone, who now comes to this place, he married us, he baptized my kids, and now I get to see him a couple days a week when he comes here for spiritual direction. So I've been very blessed by being a part of the church and now, quote unquote, working for the church, but also supporting the mission. And that's the big deal. For me, that's the biggest. It's, again, when I worked for corporate America, you were kind of working for the sake of the stockholders, right? You were there to try to enrich the stockholders and drive the largest profitability possible. Right now, my stakeholders are you guys and the lay parishioners in our Catholic diocese. And that's a pretty awesome place to be if you're looking at that as a mission that you're working towards.
Yeah, I like to think of us more as assets rather than stakeholders.
I'm just kidding. The assets with we have ratings and rankings. And,
exactly.
Tony Davis was a 4-star recruit. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, 4-star recruit, but I still went in the second round. I don't know what happened.
It was that bad sophomore year you had.
Exactly. No, that's incredible. And when we talk about the mission of the church, for us at the seminary, we're in the mission, the business, as some people say, from layman's terms, we're in the mission, the business of this. We're in the business of forming priests after the heart of Jesus Christ, right? And everything the seminary does here is to give us the gift Jacob and I and Ian and Micah and all of us that are studying, to give us the gift to discern that and to grow closer to the heart of Jesus. And so as Jacob was saying, like, he wakes up every morning, turns the faucet on, doesn't have to worry about it, right? The lights go on. I'm in a parish this summer, incredible parish. They take care of the priests very well, but I still have to, cook for myself, and I still have to wake up and think, oh, I got to make the coffee, and I got to do this, and I got to do that. And, that's part of life, right? But in the seminary, by freeing, like, I wake up in the morning and, I go to the seminary and there's breakfast, right? I don't have to worry about that. So when I wake up, I go pray, and my distractions are pretty minimal as far as from human needs. Like, I'm provided for perfectly to where I can actually discern freely and in a beautiful way, because our vocation is such that especially in these modern times, we've got a lot of distractions. We've got a lot of issues. We've got a lot of temptations. I can't imagine having the distraction of having to worry about cooking dinner or this or that while I'm studying, praying, discerning, and doing ministry all at the same time in the seminary. Now, as a priest, that's a whole other story, right? That's why we're in seminary. It's a gift that the church has given to men studying for the priesthood, is that the church wants us to be able to discern. And so that is just such a unique kind of gift that a lot of people don't see or even realize. And people ask, like, oh, how's the seminary? It must be tough, this and that. And I'm like, honestly, it's the most incredible place that I've ever been. As far as I'm provided for, I'm so blessed. And it's not like, oh, how much money do you make? And I'm like, enough to, pay for gas and go fishing and
buy a few flies.
Cell phone bill, car insurance.
Yeah, like little things like that. Like, yeah, if you want to make money, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, you're not in the priesthood to make money.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with one of my Uber drivers recently about that.
Oh, really? Really? You take Uber a lot.
I Uber a lot. Well, I was saving money not paying for car insurance last year.
Oh,
so
there you
my
go.
car was stored, so I'd Uber during the winter. But it was, it is this great. I worked for 4 years after college, and I had to budget. I had to plan meals. I was in and out of work. I just had all the normal life responsibilities of being an adult, and it was great. It taught me a lot. But when I came back to seminary, it's like, wow, this is a huge gift and a huge opportunity to spend that time in prayer, to spend that time discerning, to be formed, so that I can be sent back out. Like, the seminary is not an end. Mm-hmm. Seminary is not a forever location.
No.
But in that gift, recognizing it as gift, recognizing what you help provide for us, Paul, is that when we recognize that as a gift and in gratitude, it inspires us to actually study better, to become better informed priests, to be able to preach to people, to pray more, so that we're actually in the heart of Christ. I talk to a lot of people who have their normal work experience, and they're in and out of the office, and then they're back home with the kids, and they're like, it is so hard to find 20 minutes of silence to pray. Yeah. And so, like, even that is just a huge gift, and to not be taken for granted.
Yeah. And one thing I talked to my formator a lot last year is, like, as seminarians, we've received all of these gifts, from people like Paul who provide for us, from his business experience, and then all the people who donate to the seminary, everything like that, to the point that when we are not doing what the church has asked us to do as seminarians, which is pray, study, and mission, apostolic assignments, stuff like that, when we are not doing that, we are stealing from the church.
Yeah.
We have been given this responsibility, and when we take these gifts for granted, we kind of, in a sense, are stealing from the church.
Well, we are really, really fortunate, at least in this diocese, to have some very generous benefactors. Yeah, I kind of love the sound of the bells in the background.
Yeah, it is kind of nice touch.
To have some very, very generous benefactors who have a huge heart for the seminary, particularly. In the fundraising, what we term development side of the business, I always in conversations with those development managers, and they're in the conversations with the benefactors, right? And they'll ask the benefactors, where does your heart lead you? What kind of things would you like to give to? Some it's Catholic Charities, some it's Seeds of Hope for the Catholic schools, but many, and we're fortunate, many really have a heart for the seminary, because they know what that means is the future of the church, right? You guys, the future priests of the Catholic Church, and that's that's really impressive. And you know, with the vibes that have been in the church of late, but these people still have a real hope for the future. And it's pretty fascinating to see that. And I give thanks all the time. I'm very grateful for what these folks are able to contribute to the church. You know, we had chatted a little bit about not going overboard with a bunch of boring numbers because we don't want people falling asleep listening to this podcast. But one that we actually even put on our seminary appeal video last year.
The video.
And just to give, we need to talk about that
video.
too, who the star of the video was. But we put on the video because I think it gives people a sense of magnitude, especially for lay folks like me who are going to have 2 kids in college next year.
Yeah.
But it one of the first projects I did when I came to work here, again, the rector had come to me and said, I don't really know what it costs us per year to form a seminarian. You know, all the different aspects that you had pointed out, whether it's cost of professors in the classrooms or room and board or facilities upkeep, everything. So I went through all the financials and pulled everything together. And essentially it's $60,000 a year that this seminary, that the Archdiocese pays per seminarian to take through formation. And that's everything. That's all the salaries and wages of the cleric staff, the lay staff, the cost of our facilities, the outlying parish houses where guys live, the food, everything. And some people will be a little shocked by that number. But, you know, when you're also thinking about CSU, our alma mater, you know, you're looking at somewhere close to $30,000 just in tuition.
In-state
Tuition, right? And so a lot of people will say 60,000, you know, and then an extension of that is to think about, okay, then you got a guy who on a normal track is in 7 years of formation, right? And so if you're hunting at that, that is a lot of money that you're putting into. I mean, you're looking just somewhere short of $500,000 per guy before he's ordained a priest, right? And so that's a real commitment. You know, I mean, it's a financial commitment. It's a real overall commitment that this seminary, this diocese puts into the formation of guys for priesthood.
Yeah. And going back to your analogy of like, it's kind of like running a university, a college. But the difference is that we only have 100 guys.
Right.
You know, a little more, plus or minus,
right.
20 to 40 on any given year. And so when you look at that, we still have to have the faculty, the staff, the facilities. But whereas at, say, you know, a private, even private Catholic university, you've got 2,000 students, something like that. Well, we've got 140.
Right.
And we still have to hire the staff. We still have to pay for food. We still have to do all that. And that's why that number is so astronomical. I mean, you go to DU and you're going to pay at least $60,000 or something like that.
Right.
You know,
right.
I don't know. And that's a huge university. So it shouldn't be that much of a surprise to people to think, well, if we're running a university-style program here, plus some, because there's way more going on here than at a university, then of course it's going to cost a lot of money if we want to have the quality professors, the quality this and that.
That's exactly right. That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Matter of fact, that's another analysis that I was doing for the Board of Trustees, because we have 2 Board of Trustees meetings each year that we have to report all facets of the seminary. So, you know, there are presentations from the academic dean for the academic side, and then there's presentations for myself on the finance side. And most folks listening to your podcast probably know this too, but under the umbrella of the seminary, we also have the permanent diaconate for the diocese, and we also have the Catholic Biblical School,
which most people don't actually know.
Oh, okay.
That was a surprise to me as of 2 years ago. So the biblical school that's in a lot of parishes now, doing outreach for lay people in the parishes, incredible program forming our parishes. That's under the seminary. So the rector, Father Daniel Leonard, that's under his purview. That's under Paul's
financial,
you know, description as well. And then also the permanent diaconate. So all those deacons that are in the parishes, they get formed here. Under our budgets, under our, you know, everything that goes on here.
All the same professors that teach you guys in the classroom, then also they teach in the permanent diaconate also on Saturdays, on the formation days.
And that's a multi-year program for them as well. That's not just like a 2-seminar, all right, you're good to be a deacon.
Exactly.
But it's, all that goes into that and cost-wise that go into that, again, it can seem like a big number.
Oh, yeah.
But we have the right balance too, I guess, was one of the last things I'd say on this, because that analysis I was doing for the Board of Trustees is we only spend about 8 cents on every dollar for administrative costs, which is substantially under other college sort of peers. Mm-hmm. Most of our money is focused on things like the professors in the classrooms, the facilities where you guys stay. Through our own food service program, we feed you guys at food costs for about $12 a day.
Yeah,
breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's pretty stinking cheap. You can't go to Taco Bell for that.
And you also
challenge.
Tony Davis loves Taco Bell. The overhead administration cost too is fascinating, because my dad worked in the university system for a while before his career took him into web services and stuff. But he worked at DU for a while, and one of the things he shared with me was like so that would have been late 90s, was really when this like administration boom started hitting these universities. And so these universities are getting more and more expensive because the administrators are being hired and paid more and more. But the median salary of like the professors and the number of professors was staying about the same. Mm-hmm. And so to hear, I didn't know that about SJV before right now, but to hear that administration costs are that low and that much of what is coming in is being thrown back to support the formation, to support the teachers, the staff. And like our professors, in my experience, really seem to love teaching us and being here with
incredible.
us.
They're incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, we cannot have professors here who don't love what they do.
Right.
Because honestly, it is not easy forming men to be priests, right? Because we're studying that's one dimension of our formation here. Is
I'm not in a master's program. My primary focus isn't entirely for 14 hours a day academics. It's a large part of the day.
Yeah.
But it's not the sole focus.
But then I've got the apostolic dimension, I've got the human dimension, and I've got the spiritual dimension, right? And all four of those dimensions are incredibly important. And so we have to give 100% to each one of those dimensions. So we can't let our intellectual drag. We can't let our apostolic, our human, our spiritual, or any of the other dimensions. We can't let those lack. And so for a professor who's formed in this intellectual kind of institution mindset, that's very hard for them. And thank God the professors that we have here, they work with us. They're patient with us. They push us to be better, smarter, holier men. But at the same time, they understand. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I've had to email a professor or talk to a professor the next day like, sorry, doc, I didn't get that reading done. I had an apostolate assignment I had to do, or I went on a hospital run with my formator, or something like that. Whereas if you said that at a university setting in a master's program, because essentially that's what we're in, they would just laugh at you and say, tough luck.
Well, that's the growing pains of formation for us is, to take seriously the gift that all of our donors are giving us, that all of our professors are giving us, that all of our administrators are giving us. Take seriously that gift and to honor it by doing it well, but then to also, have our human formation where, like, sometimes you're tired and it's hard to focus in class, or you didn't get the reading done because you fell asleep, and then to have a professor in class when, like, just this past semester, there was one day, particularly with one class, that we were all just dragging, and the professor just said, "You know what, guys? When you guys are dragging, or I see droopy eyes, like I don't take it as a personal insult, because I know there's other stuff going on, and I just assume that something was going on last night, or it's been a rough week for whatever reason." And to have that kind of generosity from the professor is really generous, but again continues to call us further into like accepting of the gift and then to live up to that. But at the same time, the diocese, the bishop, the administration, the professors are very good at not creating this transactional mindset of like, we don't get told, here's how much you cost, you owe us this, go, in kind of a mechanical way. It's like, we want to invest in you. We want you to be the best Christian man you can be. And then if it is God's will, we want you to be the best priest you can be, and we are happy to be part of that. But it's not this transactional, like, we've spent X amount of dollars on you and we demand X amount of output. And I really appreciate that, because that frees me to actually to serve and love and be inspired, as opposed to be like kind of shackled by something.
Yeah, because like the Lord did not give with stipulations, right? And neither does our seminary. They freely give us the most incredible formation that we can receive, and that allows us to freely give what we have received to everybody, whether that's in our apostolic assignment or any of the other dimensions, right? And that's one place that Paul comes into play in a big way of like, he is giving his life, essentially. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had to call him with a problem, at night or in the evening when he's at home. It's like, hey, Paul, somebody got in a car crash, when he was totus tuus when it was under the seminary. We rang. He probably had more minutes on his phone from totus tuus than anything else, all hours of the day and night.
That was an experience.
Yeah, it was a heck of an experience, to say the least, right? But that fell under Paul. I never heard him complain, ever.
Well, thank you. One of the things I've shared with many friends who have asked me about working in a seminary, because I've also have to share that when I had told a priest friend of all people, where I had just been hired and I was going to work at a seminary, and he said, "Well, just be sure, don't go to work for the church and lose your faith." Yep. And I thought about it at the time. I thought, that's quite of a statement. But over time, I've had a few things that, when frustration can build up working for the church, I contemplate back on that. But having said that, one of the things I've shared with many friends is there's a lot of joys for working for this place. One of my fondest is as one of the lay employees around here. You were just talking about classwork. And when a guy has just bombed his Latin exam, and he comes walking to my office, and he does not want to talk about theology or Latin or philosophy or whatever. He just wants to talk about the Broncos. And when I can just put down my pencil, and I learned early on, that's the time to stop, right? This is part of what I do as the mission. And I truly believe that I'm part of the formation around here, a formation team. And that's when I put down my pencil and I sit back in my chair and say, yeah, how about those Broncos? Mm-hmm. Usually that's a difficult conversation too, but given the way the Broncos have played the last couple of years. But that's a very joyful time for me to be able to engage in that. So,
and I've never felt I've probably come into your office and distracted you when you had something probably substantially better to do, but I've never felt like quickly ushered out the door. Like, hey, you kind of pause what you're doing and you look up and you engage me, and we talk about, the trip I just took, or photos of the mountains, or whatever it may be, or your sons. We just had some really good conversations, and I really appreciate that, because there's an aspect of getting so focused on seminary and what seminary is doing that it's nice to sometimes talk about the Broncos, or the mountains, or skiing, or
because we're human, right? We've done a podcast already about our human side, right, and how important that is to us, and. I mean, it just, as young men, you get 100 young men being formed to be priests. We like music and fishing and sports and all of that, and so it's refreshing to be able to go down, that hallway, and I can stop at every office on the way to the library. And I used to, whenever I was in philosophy, I was asked, one of the things for formation, I had to make a daily schedule. I mean, down to the minute, I had to schedule it out and give it to my formator. And he goes, "What is this time?" It says mingle. I literally had scheduled.
That's where I remain human.
Yeah, I had 15-minute increments between classes. If I had an hour break, it was 15 minutes, or even 20 or 30. He's like, "What is that?" And I go, "Well, I got to talk to Paul, and I got to talk to the secretary. I got to talk to this person, that person." He's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah. What do you want me to do?" Right. This is part of being a human, right?
Right. Exactly. Wrapping back around to where you guys were a few minutes ago, where you were talking about environment you live in, and there's certain things you don't have to worry about, those sort of obligations, and I think for the folks listening to this podcast, benefactors ask the same sort of question a lot too. They just want to make sure that for those needs, right, for your basic human needs, that you're taken care of, and you are. You do get a stipend each month. You're all under health insurance if you're past 26 years old. Those sort of things you're taken care of, and it's incumbent upon people like myself to make sure that those are all all done in a way that are in the background, that you don't have to fret about, you don't have to worry about, but that you can focus on your formation, because it's an intense 7 years, right? It's a very intense 7 years, and I've learned that by working here, which I don't think most Pew Catholics are aware of. Mm-hmm. So that's where my appreciation and my drive to that mission comes in, is just to make sure those things are taken care of for you. And if you have needs, that I'm there, or others in the faculty and staff are there to help.
Yeah, I mean, all the way down to the little things. Like, we've got a ping pong table down in our catacombs room, and it's like, hey, Paul, can we get new ping pong paddles? Like, it's just like the small little things.
So, to wrap up, I've got a couple questions for you about Tony Davis. First off, the one big thing us seminarians are part of every year that you're involved in is the seminarians' annual seminary appeal.
Oh, come on.
We go to parishes and we kind of share about ourselves and about the seminary. And this past year, we had a nice video so that we could kind of have a consistent messaging. And Tony Davis was the star.
Yeah, when the producers, we kind of started working on some ideas of what we wanted the video to look like, and then the producer said, we really want that model seminarian, that guy who is
looks like a model, or
he
acts like
everything, right? He's presentable, he's articulate, he's really funny.
As we learned on the video, his mom is proud of him.
And right off the bat, it was Tony Davis.
You know what the funniest part about all this stuff is? Is that I am like the least stereotypical seminarian. Jacob and I both probably fit in that boat. And when they asked me, like, hey, we're filming a video, we want you to be a part of it, I was like, sweet. Do you guys have like a censor button for throughout the day? Because they said they were going to be following me around, filming a day in the life of a seminarian.
Which was our same response when they asked us to do this podcast over the summer. Like, oh no.
You don't know what you're getting into, right? We're like formation. The biggest part of my formation is learning what a filter is. But when they asked me that, I was like, yeah, sure, we could do a day in the life of a seminarian. That would be fun, right? And then they're like, here's a script. Here's what we're doing. And I was like, what? There's no way. There's no way I could do this. You guys need to find somebody else. Like, I even told them, I was like, you guys know Ryan Kent? He's like an incredible guy. He's very filmable. Like, why don't you guys choose him? And they're like, no, you'll be fine. You'll suffice.
Well, the good part was, I think that process for Tony squashed all thought, Jacob, of being eventually maybe becoming a Hollywood actor.
Oh, that's good.
Because after he was doing 4 and 5 and 6 takes on every scene,
oh my gosh,
and you'd see him roll his eyes and turn around and walk back down the hallway. Okay, let's do it again. I knew that was scratched off his bucket list.
Maybe. I even was injured in one of those scenes. They threw. I couldn't believe this.
Did he put in a workers' comp for that?
I tried. No, Paul shut it down. He told me something about grow up, stop being a baby.
It's just a paper cut.
Exactly. No, there's a scene. They throw these flowers at me. It's like we're talking about the sacrament, all the things that a priest does in his ministry. And so they chuck these flowers at me, and I catch them in my right hand, and they have thorns on them.
They had a rose thorn. Oh my goodness.
It was rose thorns. And so
I gotta talk to the director.
My hand is bleeding while we're filming this. And the funny part is after the appeals, some guy came up to me. He's like, that video was fake. I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you caught those flowers with your left hand. No one catches with their left, or with their left hand, this and that. Like, are you right-handed or left-handed? I was like, I'm right-handed. He's like, why'd you catch those with your left hand? And I was like, well, my right hand was bleeding. I couldn't catch them with or maybe it was vice versa, I forget. But it was just hilarious, like, to see what stuff like that goes into, like that Catholic production that Jacob and I always kind of joke about. The slow pans, the drone shots. It drove me nuts.
Well, the great value of the video, at least what I was promoting early on as we've been talking about producing one, it's kind of what you're doing in this podcast, right? It gives everybody an insight to what seminary life is really like. Because again, it's not you guys spending part of your day in a classroom, part of your days in a chapel kneeling, praying. Mm-hmm. They understand that it's young men going through this phase of their life. We're just forming you to be Catholic priests rather than engineers or doctors or lawyers or something like that, right? Yeah. And I think that's one of the feedback I got from many parishioners who saw it was that's what they liked about it, is they not only saw our campus here a little bit, but some of the different things that we did, the different shots we did in the different places, gave them an insight that most, again, Pew Catholics don't get.
It's
to
seeing
a daily life.
seeing the living spaces of the seminary. You know,
Yeah,
it's not just a chapel and a classroom.
Right.
You know, we sleep here, we eat here, we play sports here, we watch movies here.
All of the above. Yeah, maybe listeners, maybe you can keep an eye out. Jake and I have been joking for forever about doing a seminary raw and uncut video for our coffee house, where we kind of do a playoff of the last seminary's appeal video. So maybe that'll make it to YouTube one of these days.
We also were talking about doing a bad lip reading of all the other videos that have already been done.
That is what I'm most excited for. Can you imagine like the seminary appeal video? Also, I mean, in all honesty, if you go to our website, we've got the 4 dimensions of. Is there 4 or 5? I don't even know.
There's 4 videos.
There's 4 videos that are out there right now.
Yeah, so the 4 dimensions of what we do here.
And remind me again, what's that website?
I don't know. I just type in St. John
sjvdenver.org.
Is it sjvdenver.org?
That's where they would find the videos.
I knew that. I'm faithful. I go to the library website because I study. sjvdenver.org, and you can find all of those videos, and they're actually really insightful. So if you have some questions about what we do here at the seminary, go watch those. They're very well made, very well done. So that's all I have to say about that.
My last question is he a good fisherman?
Tony is, well,
we
were having this conversation as we were sitting around the campfire the last night we were there, and this was his own admittance. We were talking about, because I'm more your redneck sort of fisherman, right? I grew up as a kid in Kansas, so I was fishing for bass or catfish or something like that. So I'm a lower level fly fisherman. And in Tony's own admittance, he's reaching the threshold where he's one of those snob fly fishermen.
Okay.
Because you have to be very precise, and you have to use, you got to know your entomology, so you know what bugs you're throwing and what's the water temperature and what's the flow rates but having said all that, it pays off because Tony caught a lot more fish than I did, and a lot bigger fish than I did. So yes, to answer your question, Jacob, he's a pretty good fly fisherman.
My grandpa took me fishing when I was about 10 years old, first time ever out in Oregon, and we had a little paddle boat out, paddle boat, and I get ready and I'm super excited. I'm about to cast out, and I just whip my rod behind me, and I just go, and like with the first cast, I catch a huge one.
That's what I'm talking about.
It was my grandpa's lip. And I just feel the like my pole yank back because he felt that it had caught his lip, and so he grabs the line and just pulls it. So as I'm pulling against it, he's pulling back so that I don't like rip his lip off.
Wow, that's
so
quick reaction.
That was my first fishing experience.
Nice.
But
scarred you for life, or what?
Did Grandpa take you out anymore?
He did actually, and we caught a few, and he taught me how to scale them and.
Yeah,
and how to cast without your partner.
Catching somebody, to have spatial awareness.
You got a real hog.
I'll be honest.
The line.
I'm not really. I haven't been fly fishing. My favorite is to just sit on the bank, and I don't even have to have like any bait on the line. I just want to put the line out there and then stick it in the ground and have my beer cooler.
Oh yeah,
and just sit there, and I'm fishing.
Yeah. One of my favorite. My dad and his buddy came out this past winter. And so we went skiing. So once again, generous person's like, hey, you should stay in my condo. So I did. It was incredible. I had some good father-son time. But in the middle of winter up in Silverthorne, I took my dad fishing. And what that means for my dad is we took cheese ball, beer, and crackers. And I fished, and him and his buddy Wade sat on the bank and ate beer and cheese ball and watched me fish. And it was hilarious because you got some of these like, millennial guerrilla fishermen, as one of my favorite podcasts was just describing, these guys that are just gung-ho fishermen. They came down the river and they see me fishing, and then they pan up to the bank and see these two old guys eating cheese ball and drinking beer and just laughing in the snow. And they're just like kind of judging us in their hearts. And I was like, I would have it no other way. Like, this is my kind of place.
Well, I mentioned to him at the end of our trip, mentioned to Tony at the end of our trip that we need to make this an annual event. So it's a lot of fun, and we've enjoyed the last 2 years. Our outings.
Put it on my calendar next year. I'm gonna come in.
We'll get you in the river. Get you in.
If any of you guys want to go fishing, you want to teach me something about fishing, because I do not. I'm still a young fisherman. You can contact the seminary, and they will put you in contact with me. So if there's anyone listening that is a guide or a good fisherman, please let me know so I can learn a little more about the fishing fishing game here in Colorado.
So we hope this podcast was informative, kind of seeing behind the curtain of seminary operations a little bit. And Paul, thanks for being on.
It's been fun. It's been fun. Thank you.
Sharing with us and just chatting. Any last words for the listeners?
Say hi to your wife.
Hello to Angie and my two sons, Zachary and Jacoby. And for those folks listening, keep your support in both prayers and if you find it in your heart, for your contributions to these guys that are in formation, because it's the future of our Catholic Church.
Amen. Well, thank you very much, Paul. Thank you, listeners. This has been the Sons of Ours podcast.
And thank you to all the donors who do keep this place running and give us huge gifts. So for all of us at Sons of Ours.
That's ours with an A, right?
With an A. We're learning. We're going
to stop that.
Yeah. I might cut that out right now this time.
All right,
we'll catch you later. Have a good time.
Yep, God bless.